Dr. Hyunwoo Kim stood at the observation deck of the spaceship New Seoul, watching the stars bend and twist outside the window. The ship had been traveling through space faster than light for 3 weeks now. Today was the day they would meet. Aliens for the first time in human history. Hyunwoo was nervous. He had spent his whole life studying languages, but how do you talk to beings from another world? He carried a small device that could translate many Earth languages, but would it work with alien speech? His hands shook a little as he checked. His notes one more time. The ship's captain, Bo-Ra Lee, walked over to him. She was a tall woman with short black hair and serious eyes. She had been in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years and had never backed down from a fight. But today, even she looked worried. "Are you ready, Doctor?" Bo-Ra asked. "We should reach their space station in 1 hour." Hyunwoo nodded. "As ready as anyone can be for something like this. Have you heard anything new from our scouts?" "The alien ship is big, much bigger than ours. They call themselves the Galactic Confederation. From what we can tell, they speak for many different alien races." Bo-Ra looked out the window. "They seem friendly so far. They invited us to meet them instead of shooting at us, which is a good start." Behind them, Dr. Tae-min Park was checking his equipment. Tae-min was a military engineer who designed weapons and armor for Earth's forces. He was excited to see what kind of technology the aliens had. Maybe humans could learn something new. "I wonder what their weapons are like," Tae-min said to himself. "Do they use lasers, plasma beams? Maybe they have something we never thought of." The ship's computer made a soft sound. "Attention, crew. We are now entering alien space. Prepare for first contact." Through the window, they could see a massive space station floating in the darkness. It was shaped like a flower with many arms reaching out in all directions. Lights moved along its surface like glowing rivers. Ships of strange shapes came and went from docking ports. It was beautiful and scary at the same time. "New Seoul, this is Federation Station Harmony," a voice said over the radio. The words came through in perfect English, which surprised everyone. "Welcome to our space. We are happy to meet the humans. Please follow our guide ship to Docking Bay 7. A small silver ship appeared next to them. It was smooth and round, unlike the sharp angles of human ships. It moved without any visible engines, just gliding through space like a fish swimming through water. Bo-Ra followed the guide ship to the docking bay. The process was smooth and easy. When they landed, Hyunwoo felt his heart beating fast. This was it. The moment that would change everything for humanity. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. The air that came in smelled strange, like flowers mixed with metal. 3 aliens waited for them on the other side. The first alien was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. Its head was larger than a human's, and it had big golden eyes. It wore robes that seemed to glow with their own light. This was Ambassador, Velthani of the Velthani race. The second alien looked more like a human, but its skin was gray and its fingers were very long. It had no hair, and its eyes were completely black. This was Counselor Mordek of the Mordek Empire. The third alien was the strangest. It looked like a plant that had learned to walk. Its body was made of thick green vines, and leaves grew from its shoulders. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind through trees. This was Speaker Root's song of the growing worlds. "Welcome, humans," Velthani said. Its voice was high and musical. "We have waited long to meet you. Your species is new to the stars, but we sense great potential in you." Hyunwoo stepped forward. "Thank you for meeting us. I am Dr. Hyunwoo Kim. This is Captain Bo-Ra Lee and Dr. Tae-min Park. We come in peace, hoping to learn and share knowledge." "Peace is good," Mordek said. Its voice was deep and slow. "We have much to teach you about the galaxy. There are rules here that keep all species safe. Old rules that have worked for thousands of years." "What kind of rules?" Bo-Ra asked. "Come," Rootsong said, its voice rustling like leaves. "We will show you to the meeting room. There we can talk properly." They walked through corridors that seemed to be made of living crystal. The walls glowed softly and changed color as they passed. Other aliens moved through the halls, some walking, some floating, some moving in ways that hurt to look at. All of them stopped to stare at the humans. The meeting room was large and round, with a table that grew up from the floor like a tree. Chairs shaped themselves from the walls to fit each being perfectly. When Hyunwoo sat down, his chair felt like it was made just for him. "Now we talk about important things," Velthani said. "First, you must understand the word lock protocol. It keeps the galaxy peaceful." "What is that?" Taemin asked. The three aliens looked at each other. Mordek spoke first. "There are words that cannot be spoken, concepts that must not be shared. This has been true for so long that most beings have forgotten why." "I don't understand," Hyunwoo said. "What words cannot be spoken?" "Words about—" Velthani started to speak, then stopped. Its mouth moved, but no sound came out. It tried. Again, but the same thing happened. Rootsong tried next. "The old weapons that throw—" Again, silence. The plant being's leaves rustled with frustration. Mordek made a gesture with its long fingers. "Show them," it said to Velthani. Velthani stood up and walked to a wall. The wall became clear like glass, showing space outside. In the distance, they could see two ships practicing combat. The ships fired beams of bright energy at each other. Shields flickered and sparked. "We fight with energy," Velthani said. "Light and heat and force that flows like water. This is how war has been for ages beyond counting." "But what about—" Taemin started to ask something. Then his face went strange. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He tried again, looking confused. "You feel it now," Mordek said. "The binding touches all thinking beings, even you humans." Taemin looked worried. "I was going to ask about weapons that shoot solid objects, like bullets or missiles, but I can't say those words." "The protocol works on you too," Rootsong said. "This is good. It means you can join the Confederation safely." Bora frowned. "But why can't we talk about certain weapons? What's so dangerous about them?" "We do not know," Velthani admitted. "The word lock is older than our oldest stories. It has always been this way. Some say it prevents great wars. Others say it protects us from ideas too dangerous to think." "What happens if someone tries to break this rule?" Hyunwoo asked. The three aliens became very quiet. Finally, Mordek spoke. "No one has ever succeeded. The words simply will not come. Even if you write them down, others cannot read them properly. The mind refuses to understand." Taemin was still trying to speak certain words, but each time his voice just stopped. It was like something invisible was covering his mouth. He looked scared and frustrated. "This is wrong," Bora said. "Humans should be free to speak about anything. Knowledge shouldn't be hidden." "Many young species feel this way at first," Velthani said kindly. "But you will learn to accept it. The peace of the galaxy depends on it." "What if we don't want to accept it?" Bora asked. The three aliens looked at each other again. This time, their expressions were harder to read. "Then you cannot join the Confederation," Rootsong said. "You would have to stay in your own space, alone among the stars." Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his back. Humanity had just learned they were not alone in the universe, only to discover that joining the galactic community meant giving up part of their freedom to think and speak. But what choice did they have? Earth was just one small planet. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders they could barely imagine. Could humanity really turn away from all of that? As he looked at the aliens around the table, Hyunwoo realized that first contact was more complicated than anyone had expected. The question wasn't just whether humans and aliens could understand each other. The question was whether humans were willing to let the galaxy change who they were. 3 months had passed since humanity's first meeting with the Galactic Confederation. The research station Sejong now floated in space near the alien station Harmony. Human scientists worked day and night to understand the strange word lock protocol that prevented them from speaking about certain weapons. Jinny Choi was one of the youngest scientists on the station. She was only 25 years old, but she was brilliant at physics and mathematics. Every day, she tried to understand why some words simply would not come out of her mouth. It made no sense according to everything she knew about science. "It's like there's a wall in my brain," she told her friend Dong-hyun Yoon. Dong-hyun was the chief engineer on the station. He was older than Jin-ai and had built machines all his life. "I know the words I want to say, but they just disappear before I can speak them," Dong-hyun nodded as he worked on a computer. I've been trying to design new weapons for our ships. Every time I think about certain types of, things that move fast and hit hard, my mind goes blank. Things that move fast and hit hard, Ginny repeated. That's the closest we can get to saying it. But look at this. She showed Dong-hyun her computer screen. On it were mathematical equations that described motion, force, and energy. The numbers were clear and perfect. I can write the math, Jin'ei said excitedly. I can't say the words, but I can write down exactly how these weapons would work. The word lock only affects speech and direct thoughts. Dong-hyun's eyes went wide. Are you saying we could build these weapons if we never talked about what we were building? Maybe, Jin'ei said. We would have to work in complete silence. No talking about the purpose, just following the math and the blueprints. Before they could test this idea, an alarm rang through the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Captain Wu Jin-o's voice came over the speakers. All crew to emergency stations. We have received urgent news from the Confederation. Jin'ei and Dong-hyun ran to the main meeting room. Other scientists and crew members were already there, looking worried. Captain Wu Jin stood at the front of the room next to a holographic image of Admiral Sung-hwan Kang from the Confederation fleet. Admiral Kang was a being that looked like a mix between a human and a large cat. His species was called the Kethvar, and they were known for being excellent warriors. But today, the Admiral looked afraid. Friends from Earth, Admiral Kang said, his voice shaking slightly. I bring terrible news. The Devourers have returned. Murmurs of fear went through the room. The humans had heard stories about the Devourers during their time with the Confederation. They were ancient machines that had attacked the galaxy thousands of years ago. Most beings thought they were just scary stories from the past. We thought they were gone forever, someone said. So did we, Admiral Kang replied. But 3 days ago, they attacked the Outer Rim worlds. 2 entire planets are gone, just empty space where they used to be. Captain Wu Jin looked grim. What do the Devourers want? We don't know. They don't communicate. They just destroy everything they find. Our energy weapons barely scratch their ships. They seem to absorb the power and grow stronger. How long? Before they reach the core worlds? Asked Dr. Yun Soo-jung, Earth's chief scientist who had just arrived from Earth. At their current speed, maybe 6 months. We are trying to slow them down, but we're losing ships every day. After the meeting ended, Admiral Kang asked to speak privately with the human leaders. When they were alone, he looked around carefully, then leaned in close. There is something else, he whispered. Something I couldn't say in front of the others. Your ships have strange energy patterns, different from anything we've seen before. Our sensors detect unusual power signatures when you fire your weapons. Dr. Yun-soo frowned. Our weapons aren't that different from yours. We use energy beams just like everyone else. But there's something more, Admiral Kang insisted. Something hidden. I don't know what it is, but I think humans might have knowledge that could help us. After the Admiral left, the human leaders met in a secure room. Dr. Yun-soo looked at each person carefully. Jin'ei told me about her discovery today, he said. About how we might be able to build certain weapons if we don't talk about them. I think it's time to test that theory. Captain Wu Jin shook his head. It's too dangerous. What if the Confederation finds out we're breaking their most sacred rule? What if we don't try and everyone dies? Dr. Yun-soo replied. The Devourers are immune to energy weapons. Maybe they're not immune to other types. Jin'ei felt her heart racing. Are you saying we should try to build the things we can't name? I'm saying we should explore all possibilities, Dr. Yun-soo said, quietly, carefully, and in complete silence. That night, Jin'ei couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the math on her computer screen. The equations were beautiful and simple. They described how to make objects move very fast using electromagnetic force. She had always wondered why no one in the galaxy used such weapons. Now she understood. They literally couldn't think about them clearly enough to build them. But humans were different. They had only been affected by the word lock for a few months. Maybe their minds weren't as deeply changed as the older species. Next morning, Jin'ei found Dong-hyun in his workshop. She handed him a piece of paper covered with equations and diagrams. He looked at it for a long time. This is a design for... he started to say, then stopped. He couldn't finish the sentence, but he understood what the paper showed. Can you build it? Jin-A asked. Dong-hyun studied the design more carefully. It showed how to use powerful magnets to accelerate a metal projectile to incredible speeds. The concept was simple, but the engineering would be difficult. I would need special materials, he said finally, and I couldn't tell anyone what I was building. I would have to order parts for power experiments and magnetic research. How long would it take? Working alone, maybe 2 months. Working with a team that doesn't ask questions? 3 weeks. Jin-A made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Let's do it. Over the next few days, they carefully recruited other humans to help. They couldn't explain the true purpose of the project, so they called it Alternative Defense Research. Everyone who joined had to agree to work in silence and follow the blueprints exactly without asking why. Dong-hyun ordered materials for what appeared to be experiments with magnetic fields and power systems. No one questioned why he needed so much metal and so many electromagnets. Scientists were always building strange things. Major Young-ho Shin, a tactical officer, joined the team after Jin-A showed him the math. He couldn't say what the weapon would do, but he understood from the equations that it would be very powerful. Lieutenant Min Seo-han, who designed targeting systems for ships, also joined. She was excited to work on something new, even if she couldn't talk about it. Engineer Ji-hoon Bae helped with the power systems. The weapon would need enormous amounts of electricity to work properly. They worked in a sealed laboratory that they called the Quiet Lab. Inside, no one spoke unless absolutely necessary. They communicated through hand signals, written notes, and computer messages. It felt strange and secretive, but it also felt important. As they built the prototype, strange things began to happen. Sometimes, when Jin-A looked at the weapon taking shape, she felt an odd sensation in her mind. It was like something was trying to make her forget what she was seeing. But the feeling passed quickly, and she could continue working. Other team members reported similar experiences. The word-lock protocol seemed to be fighting against what they were doing, but it wasn't strong enough to stop them completely. After 2 weeks of silent work, they had built their first prototype. It was a simple device, just a metal rail with powerful electromagnets along its length. When activated, it could accelerate a small metal rod to incredible speeds. Should we test it? Dong-hyun wrote on a piece of paper. Jin-A nodded. But how do you test a weapon that no one in the galaxy can properly understand? They would have to be very careful. If the Confederation discovered what they were doing, humanity might be expelled from galactic society. But if they didn't test it, they would never know if their secret weapon could save everyone from the Devourers. The next morning, Jin-A received word that another planet had fallen to the Devourer machines. Time was running out for the entire galaxy. It was time to see if humanity's forbidden knowledge could make a difference. Dr. Eun-soo Jang stood in his office aboard the research station Sejong, looking at reports that made his blood run cold. In the past month, 7 more worlds had fallen to the Devourers. Billions of beings were dead or missing. The Confederation fleet was losing ships faster than they could build them. He pressed a button on his desk. Jin-A, please come to my office. Bring the others. Within minutes, Jin-A Choi, Dong-hyun Yoon, and the rest of the secret team gathered in the secure room. Dr. Yoon-soo locked the door and activated a privacy shield that would block any listening devices. I'm making this official, he said quietly. Project Silence begins today. Jin-A, you're the science lead. Dong-hyun, you're chief engineer. We're going to build weapons that can't be named, and we're going to do it faster than anyone thought possible. Major Young-ho Shin leaned forward. How many people will know about this? As few as possible. We'll tell people we're working on advanced magnetic systems or kinetic research. No one uses those words for weapons anymore, so it should be safe. Lieutenant Min Seo-han raised her hand. What about testing? We can't fire these weapons without someone noticing. Dr. Yoon-soo smiled grimly. I've spoken with Captain Woo Jin-oh. His ship, the Busan Thunder, will be our test platform. Officially, they're testing new engine designs. Engineer Ji-hoon Bae looked worried. Sir, what if the word-lock protocol stops us? What if we build these weapons but can't use them when the time comes? Then we'll figure out a way around that too, Dr. Eun-soo said. Humanity didn't get to the stars by giving up when things looked impossible. Over the next 2 weeks, Project Silence grew in secret. Dr. Yunsu recruited people carefully, choosing humans who were good at following orders without asking too many questions. They set up 3 quiet labs on the station, each one soundproofed and isolated. In Quiet Lab 1, Jin-A worked with a team of physicists to perfect the theoretical design. They called it an electromagnetic acceleration system when they had to write reports, but among themselves, they just called it the device. The math was beautiful but complex. They had to calculate exactly how much power was needed, how fast the projectile would travel, and how much damage it would cause. The numbers were staggering. A simple metal rod, fired at the right speed, could punch through the strongest armor like it was made of paper. In Quiet Lab 2, Dong-hyun led the engineering team that actually built the devices. They worked in complete silence, communicating only through hand signals and written notes. The weapons took shape slowly, long metal rails with powerful electromagnets arranged along their length. The hardest part was the power system. Ji-hoon Bae had to design batteries and capacitors that could store enormous amounts of energy and release it all in a fraction of a second. The first few prototypes caught fire during testing. The team learned to work with fire extinguishers always nearby. In Quiet Lab 3, Lieutenant Min-seo Han worked on targeting systems. How do you aim a weapon that fires projectiles faster than anything in galactic history? The computers had to calculate trajectory, target movement, and dozens of other factors in milliseconds. Major Young-ho Shin studied tactics and strategy. He couldn't talk about how the weapons would be used in battle, but he could write detailed plans for magnetic system deployment and kinetic engagement protocols. As they worked, strange things continued to happen. Sometimes, team members would forget what they were doing in the middle of a task. They would stand in front of a half-built weapon with confused expressions, unable to remember why they were there. Other times, they would try to write down ideas and find that their hands wouldn't move. The word-lock protocol was still fighting them, but it seemed weaker when they worked together. It's like the binding gets confused when there are multiple minds working on the same problem, Jin-A wrote in her private notes. Maybe it was designed to stop individuals, not teams. Captain Woo Jin-oh visited the labs often, but he never asked direct questions about what they were building. He seemed to understand that some knowledge was dangerous to speak aloud. Instead, he focused on practical matters. How much space will these systems need on my ship? He asked Dong-hyun. Dong-hyun showed him diagrams of the weapon installations. They were big. Each system needed its own power supply and cooling unit. The Busan Thunder would have to sacrifice some of its energy weapons to make room. Will this be enough to make a difference? Captain Woo Jin asked. Jin-A pulled up her calculations on a silent computer screen. The numbers showed that a single projectile from their device could destroy a ship much larger than the Busan Thunder. Captain Woo Jin's eyes went wide when he saw the projections. When can we test it? He asked. 2 more weeks, Dong-hyun wrote on a piece of paper. Those 2 weeks felt like the longest in human history. Every day brought news of more devourer attacks. The ancient machines were getting closer to the core worlds where billions of beings lived. Confederation fleets threw themselves at the invaders and were destroyed without slowing them down. Finally, the day came for the first test. The Busan Thunder flew to an empty system where asteroids drifted in the cold darkness. Captain Woo Jin chose a rock the size of a small mountain as their target. The crew had been told they were testing a new type of engine that used magnetic acceleration principles. Most of them didn't ask for more details. Military crews were used to working on classified projects. Jin-A and her team watched from the research station through high-powered telescopes. They couldn't be on the ship during the test in case something went wrong. Busan Thunder ready for test, Captain Woo Jin reported over the radio. Beginning power-up sequence. On the ship, Ji-hoon Bae carefully brought the weapon's power systems online. The electromagnets hummed with barely contained energy. Warning lights flashed as the capacitors charged to dangerous levels. Lieutenant Min-seo Han locked onto the target asteroid. Her targeting computer calculated distance, rotation, and trajectory. Everything looked perfect. Ready to fire, she reported. Captain Woo Jin took a deep breath. Fire when ready. Min-seo pressed a button that she couldn't name. The ship shuddered as enormous amounts of electricity flowed through the rails. A metal rod, no bigger than a pencil, accelerated to incredible speed in less than a second. The projectile shot through space faster than any missile or energy beam the galaxy had ever seen. It covered the distance to the asteroid in heartbeats. When it hit, something unprecedented happened. The asteroid didn't just break apart or explode. It simply ceased to exist where the projectile passed through it. The metal rod, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, transferred so much kinetic energy that the rock was turned into plasma and scattered to the solar winds. But that wasn't the strangest part. At the moment of impact, every psychic species within 100 light-years felt something they had never experienced before. The constant background hum of the wordlock protocol went completely silent for exactly 3 seconds. On the research station, Ginny suddenly found that she could speak freely about what they had just done. "We fired a railgun at that asteroid and completely destroyed it," she said clearly. Then, just as suddenly, the words became impossible again. Similar reports came in from across the system. Confederation personnel reported brief moments of mental clarity where forbidden concepts became clear only to fade back into confusion. Admiral Shenghuan Kang contacted the human ships immediately. "What did you just do?" he demanded. "Our psychic sensors detected a massive disruption in the wordlock field," Captain Wu Jin thought quickly. "We tested a new magnetic acceleration system. It was more powerful than expected." "That doesn't—" "Explain the psychic effect," Admiral Kang said. "Our telepaths felt something break." For a moment, Dr. Yunsu took over the conversation. "We're investigating the phenomenon now. It might be related to the high energy levels involved." Admiral Kang was quiet for a long moment. "Doctor, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need an honest answer. Did your test involve weapons that the wordlock protocol prevents us from discussing?" Dr. Yunsu felt the familiar sensation of words dying in his throat when he tried to answer directly. But he found he could speak around the subject. "Admiral, our research involves concepts that may have been restricted for reasons we don't fully understand. But if these concepts can help us defeat the Devourers, don't we have a duty to explore them?" "The wordlock exists for important reasons," Admiral Kang said. "But," he paused, struggling with his own thoughts. "These are desperate times. How soon can you have more of these systems ready?" "Give us 4 weeks," Dr. Yunsu said. "You have them. But, Doctor, if this goes wrong, if these weapons cause more harm than good, humanity will bear the responsibility." After the communication ended, the human team looked at each other in amazement. They had done it. They had built a weapon that could destroy targets completely, and they had proven that the wordlock protocol could be disrupted. But they had also opened a door that had been sealed for thousands of years. What lay beyond that door was still unknown. In the distance, the Devourer fleet continued its advance toward the heart of the galaxy. Time was running out, but for the first time since the ancient machines had returned, someone had a weapon that might actually stop them. The question was whether they could build enough of. Dr. So-Young Nam had always been fascinated by the mysteries of the universe, but the wordlock protocol was the strangest puzzle she had ever encountered. As a quantum physicist, she spent her days studying the smallest particles of matter and the forces that held reality together. Now she was trying to understand why an entire galaxy couldn't speak certain words. She worked alone in a small laboratory aboard the research station Sejong, surrounded by computers that analyzed quantum fields and psychic energy patterns. For weeks she had been studying the data from the Railgun test, and what she discovered made her hands shake with excitement and fear. "It's not natural," she whispered to herself, staring at the readings on her screen. "The wordlock field isn't some law of physics. Someone built it." Her analysis showed that the psychic binding had a structure, like a vast invisible web that covered the entire galaxy. It was incredibly old and unimaginably complex, but it was definitely artificial. Some ancient civilization had created it on purpose. So-Young printed out her findings and ran to find Dr. Yunsu Jiang. She found him in the main laboratory, where teams of humans were working in silence to build more railgun systems. In the past 3 weeks, they had constructed 12 complete weapons. Not enough to arm a fleet, but enough to test them in real combat. "Sir, you need to see this," So-Young said, handing him the papers. Dr. Yunsu read quickly, his eyes growing wider with each page. Are you certain about this? The evidence is clear. The word lock was imposed by someone else, probably millions of years ago. And here's the important part. It was designed to prevent kinetic weapons specifically. Energy weapons were left unrestricted. Why would anyone do that? So Young had been thinking about this question for days. Maybe there was a great war, and kinetic weapons were so destructive that someone decided to make the galaxy forget how to build them. Or maybe whoever created the field wanted to keep certain types of warfare for themselves. Before Dr. Yun-Su could respond, alarms began ringing throughout the station. Captain Wu Jin-Oh's voice came over the speakers. All hands to battle stations. Devourer scouts have been detected in the outer system. This is not a drill. Dr. Yun-Su grabbed So Young's arm. This is it. We're about to find out if our silent weapons actually work in real combat. They ran to the command center, where screens showed the tactical situation. 3 Devourer ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were moving slowly toward the inhabited worlds, scanning everything in their path. The ships looked nothing like the graceful vessels of the Confederation. They were dark, angular things that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved without any visible engines, sliding through space like sharks through water. Commander Jae-Sung Park was leading a small Confederation fleet to intercept them. His force included 5 energy weapon ships from different species, plus the human vessels Busan Thunder and Seoul Prime, both equipped with the new Railgun systems. Remember, Dr. Yun-Su said over the communication channel, you cannot talk about what these weapons are or how they work. Just follow your targeting protocols and fire when ready. On the Busan Thunder, Captain Wu Jin-Oh watched the Devourer ships approach. He had fought in many battles during his military career, but this felt different. He was about to use weapons that technically shouldn't exist against enemies that had been destroying the galaxy for weeks. Lieutenant Min Seo, are you targeting? Systems ready? He asked. Yes, sir. The computers are tracking all 3 targets. Engineer Ji-Hoon, what's our power status? Capacitors charged to full capacity. All systems showing green. The Confederation ships opened fire first. Brilliant beams of energy lanced across space, striking the Devourer vessels. The ancient machines absorbed the attacks without any visible damage. If anything, they seemed to grow slightly larger after each hit. Energy weapons are useless, Commander Jae-Sung reported. They're actually feeding on our attacks. Busan Thunder, you're cleared to test your new systems, came the order. Captain Wu Jin took a deep breath. Min Seo, target the lead ship. Fire when ready. Lieutenant Min Seo Han pressed the firing control. The ship shuddered as the railgun fired. A metal projectile shot through space at incredible speed, moving too fast for the eye to follow. The result was instant and devastating. The Devourer ship didn't explode or break apart. It simply stopped existing along the path where the projectile passed through it. The ancient machine, which had survived countless energy weapon attacks, was cut in half by a simple piece of metal moving at relativistic speed. The remaining pieces of the ship drifted apart, dark and lifeless. Direct hit, Min Seo reported, her voice filled with amazement. Target destroyed. On the Seoul Prime, Captain Mi-Young Ryu had watched the attack with fascination and horror. She had never seen anything so completely destructive. Target the second ship, she ordered her weapons officer, Lieutenant Sang-Min Lee. Firing, Sang-Min reported. The second Devourer ship met the same fate as the first. The projectile punched through its hull like it was made of paper, leaving behind only scattered debris. The third Devourer ship tried to flee, but Captain Wu Jin was ready for that. Target its engines, he ordered. The third shot disabled the fleeing ship, leaving it drifting helplessly in space. Within minutes, all 3 Devourer scouts had been destroyed or neutralized. The silence on the communication channels was deafening. For weeks, these ancient machines had been unstoppable. Entire fleets had thrown themselves at the Devourers and been destroyed without causing any damage. Now, 3 human ships had eliminated them in less than 5 minutes. How, Commander? Jae-Sung finally asked. How did you destroy them so easily? Captain Wu Jin struggled to find words that he could actually speak. Our weapons use different principles than energy-based systems. What principles? Commander Jae-Sung pressed. Again, the familiar sensation of words dying in his throat. I can't explain it clearly. The concepts are difficult to discuss. Dr. So Young, watching from the research station, suddenly understood something important. The Devourers were designed to fight energy weapons, she said to Dr. Yun-Su. They probably date from the same era as the wordlock field. Whoever created... Both systems never imagined that anyone would rediscover kinetic weapons. Which means, Dr. Yun-Su asked, which means we have an advantage that no one in galactic history has ever had. We can build weapons that the Devourers can't defend against, because they were programmed to assume such weapons were impossible. The news of the victory spread quickly through the Confederation. Within hours, Admiral Seong-Hwan Kang arrived at the Human Research Station with a fleet of ships and an urgent request. We need those weapons, he said bluntly when he met with the human leaders. The Devourers have started their main attack. 12 worlds are under assault. Our fleets are being destroyed as fast as we can deploy them. Dr. Yun-Su nodded grimly. We're already working to build more systems, but there's a problem. What problem? We can't teach your people how to build these weapons. The wordlock protocol prevents us from explaining the concepts clearly. And even if we could explain them, your people wouldn't be able to understand or remember the explanations. Admiral Kang's face fell. So only humans can use these weapons? Not necessarily, So Young said. I think I might have found a way around the problem. She led them to her laboratory, where her computers showed complex diagrams of the wordlock field. The binding works on language and direct thought transmission, but it's weaker when information is transmitted through mathematics and visual demonstration. What does that mean? Admiral Kang asked. It means we might be able to teach your people to build these weapons without ever speaking about what they're building. They would have to work from pure mathematical descriptions and follow engineering blueprints without asking questions. Dr. Yun-Su frowned. That would be incredibly difficult and dangerous. One mistake in the construction could cause a catastrophic explosion. Do we have any other choice? Admiral Kang asked. If we can't mass-produce these weapons, the Devourers will overrun the galaxy within months. So Young pulled up another display. There's something else. Each time we fire one of these weapons, the wordlock field weakens slightly. The disruption is small, but it's cumulative. If we fire enough of them, we might be able to break the psychic binding entirely. What would happen then? Admiral Kang asked. Then everyone in the galaxy would suddenly be able to think and speak about kinetic weapons freely. All the forbidden knowledge would become available again. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. For thousands of years, the wordlock protocol had shaped galactic civilization. Breaking it would change everything. How many shots would it take? Dr. Yun-Su asked. So Young did some quick calculations. Based on the data from our tests, maybe 1,000 simultaneous firings, or 10,000 spread over a few days. Admiral, Kang looked at the tactical displays showing Devourer fleets advancing on populated worlds. Then we build as many of these weapons as possible, as fast as possible. And we hope we can break this ancient curse before it's too late to save the galaxy. As they spoke, reports came in of more worlds falling to the Devourers. Time was running out, but for the first time since the ancient machines had returned, the galaxy had a real we. Professor In-Ho Choi had been a teacher for 30 years before humanity reached the stars. He had taught physics to thousands of students on Earth, and he thought he understood how to explain complicated ideas in simple ways. But teaching aliens to build weapons they couldn't think about clearly was the hardest challenge of his life. He stood in the newly constructed Silent Academy aboard the research station Sejong, looking at his first class of non-human students. 20 beings from different species sat in specially designed chairs, all of them looking confused and frustrated. There was Velkar, a young Velthani engineer with 4 arms and golden eyes. Next to him sat Mordek 9, a gray-skinned Mordek, who specialized in power systems. In the back row, a plant being called Leaf Whisper rustled nervously, its vine-like body coiled in concentration. Professor In-Ho couldn't speak to them about what they were learning to build. Instead, he had to use pure mathematics and visual demonstrations. Dr. Kyungmin Seo, a specialist in holographic technology, helped him create 3-dimensional models that showed the principles without using forbidden words. Today we study electromagnetic acceleration, Professor In-Ho said carefully. We will see how magnetic fields can move objects to very high speeds. He activated a holographic projector. In the air above the class, Mathematical equations appeared in glowing letters. The symbols showed relationships between electricity, magnetism, and motion. Below the equations, a three-dimensional model demonstrated the principles. The model showed two parallel rails with electromagnets along their length. When electricity flowed through the magnets, they created a moving magnetic field. A small, metal object placed on the rails would be pushed forward by this field, accelerating faster and faster until it reached incredible speeds. Velkar raised one of his four hands. "Professor, what is the purpose of making objects move so fast?" Professor Inho felt the familiar sensation of words dying in his throat when he tried to answer directly. "The purpose is to study the effects of high-velocity impacts on various materials." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the complete truth either. The aliens would have to figure out the real purpose for themselves. Dr. Kyung-min changed the holographic display to show what happened when a fast-moving object hit a stationary target. The mathematics were clear. Even a small projectile moving at high speed could transfer enormous amounts of kinetic energy to whatever it struck. Mordek 9 studied the equations carefully. His species was known for their logical thinking. These calculations suggest that such impacts would be extremely destructive, much more so than energy-based attacks. "That is correct," Professor Inho said. "High-velocity kinetic impacts can penetrate materials that easily absorb energy weapons." Leaf Whisper rustled with understanding. Plant beings communicated through chemical signals as well as sound, and the word-lock protocol affected them differently. The ancients. They made us forget this knowledge, because it was too powerful. Professor Inho nodded slowly. "Some knowledge has been restricted for a very long time. But desperate times may require us to remember forgotten truths." The first lesson lasted 4 hours. By the end, most of the students understood the basic principles of electromagnetic acceleration. But understanding the theory was very different from building actual weapons. The next day, they moved to the practical workshops. Admiral Jun Ki Yang had established the Silent Academy with full Confederation support after the successful battle against the Devourer scouts. More and more worlds were falling to the ancient machines, and conventional fleets couldn't stop them. In Workshop 1, Velkar worked with human engineer Dong Hyun Yoon to build his first railgun. They couldn't talk about what they were making, so they communicated through hand signals and written notes. Dong Hyun would point to a component in the blueprint, and Velkar would nod to show he understood. The work was slow and frustrating. Every few minutes, one of the alien students would stop and look confused, as if they had forgotten what they were doing. The word-lock protocol was still fighting against their efforts, making it hard to concentrate on the forbidden technology. But gradually, they made progress. Velkar's 4 arms made him very good at assembling complex machinery. Within a week, he had built a small prototype railgun that could accelerate metal pellets to impressive speeds. In Workshop 2, Mordek 9 worked on power systems with Ji-hoon Bay. The Mordek's logical thinking made him excellent at calculating exactly how much electricity was needed and how to store it safely. His first capacitor design was actually better than the original human version. Leaf Whisper had the hardest time in Workshop 3, where targeting systems were built. Plant beings thought very differently from animals, and the fast-moving mathematics of ballistic calculation didn't come naturally to them. But Lieutenant Min Seo-han was patient, and eventually Leaf Whisper learned to program targeting computers using root and branch decision trees that made sense to plant logic. After 2 weeks of intensive training, the first alien-built railgun was ready for testing. Velkar had constructed it entirely by following blueprints and mathematical descriptions, never speaking about its true purpose. The test took place in the same asteroid field where humans had first fired their prototype. Velkar's weapon was mounted on a Confederation ship called the Swift Current, commanded by Captain Temvar of the Kethvar species. "Beginning test of new magnetic acceleration system," Captain Temvar reported over the radio. He still couldn't say the word railgun, but he understood what he was testing. The weapon fired successfully, destroying a large asteroid in exactly the same way the human weapons had. But something even more important happened. The moment the alien-built railgun fired, Velkar found he could speak more clearly about what he had built. "I constructed a device that throws metal objects very fast," he said in amazement. "I can say that now. The words come easier." Dr. So-Young Nam, monitoring the test from the research station, was excited by this development. Each time someone new uses these weapons, it weakens the word lock field for them personally. The binding is breaking down gradually. Word of the successful test spread quickly through the Confederation. Within days, Admiral Junki Yang was flooded with requests from other species who wanted to learn the silent technology. The Silent Academy expanded rapidly. Professor In Ho found himself teaching classes around the clock to engineers, scientists, and military officers from dozens of different worlds. Each species learned differently. Some were better with mathematics, others with hands-on construction, still others with computer programming. The HFY, with their warrior culture, took to the weapons eagerly once they understood what they were building. The peaceful harmony singers were more reluctant, but they recognized the necessity when they saw what the Devourers were doing to inhabited worlds. Fleet Commander Hyojin Bei, a human officer who had been promoted to lead mixed-species fleets, established the first combined task force of ships equipped with railgun weapons. Her fleet included vessels from 8 different species, all armed with weapons they still couldn't fully discuss. The first major test came when the Devourers attacked the industrial world of Keth Prime. This was the homeworld of Admiral Seong Hwan, Kang's species, a planet with 6 billion inhabitants and massive manufacturing facilities. Commander Hyojin's fleet arrived just as the Devourer ships began their assault. There were 12 of the ancient machines, much larger than the scouts that had been defeated earlier. These were battleships, each one the size of a city. All ships, prepare to engage, Commander Hyojin ordered. Remember your training. Target the largest ships first. Fire in coordinated volleys. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. For the first time, a major Confederation fleet was armed with weapons the enemy couldn't defend against. Ship after ship fired their railguns, sending metal projectiles through space at incredible speeds. The Devourer battleships, which had absorbed energy weapons without damage, were torn apart by the kinetic impacts, their dark hulls cracked and shattered. Internal systems exploded as projectiles punched through armor that had protected them for millennia. Captain Temvar, flying his ship Swift Current in the heart of the battle, watched in amazement as his railgun tore through a Devourer vessel, twice the size of his own ship. "Impossible," he whispered. "We're actually winning." But the most important moment came when all 23 ships in the fleet fired their railguns simultaneously at the largest Devourer battleship. The combined kinetic assault not only destroyed the ancient machine, it caused something unprecedented to happen to the word lock field. Across the entire Keth Prime system, every intelligent being suddenly found they could speak freely about kinetic weapons for exactly 30 seconds. The psychic binding flickered and weakened dramatically. "Railgun!" Velkar shouted in excitement from his ship. "I built a railgun! That's what these weapons are called!" Similar exclamations came from ships throughout the fleet as beings spoke. Forbidden words for the first time in their lives. Then, gradually, the word lock reasserted itself, but it was noticeably weaker than before. Dr. So Young, monitoring the battle from the research station, watched her instruments with growing excitement. "We did it," she told Dr. Yunsu. "The field is breaking down faster than we pee." Admiral Subin Kim stood on the bridge of the massive battleship Incheon Rising, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for the final battle. Through the observation windows, she could see thousands of ships from dozens of different species, all equipped with weapons that had been forbidden for millennia. The Devourer homeworld hung in space before them like a dark wound in reality. It was not a natural planet, but a construct the size of a world, covered in black metal and pulsing with malevolent energy. Around it orbited hundreds of Devourer ships, the last remnants of the ancient machine intelligence that had terrorized the galaxy. "Fleet status report," Admiral Subin ordered. Captain Gyeonwoo Lee, her tactical officer, consulted his displays. 3,417 ships ready for battle. All vessels equipped with railgun systems. The Silent Academy has been very successful. Even species that joined the project last week have functional kinetic weapons. Devourer fleet analysis? Approximately 600 ships of various sizes, plus the homeworld's defensive systems. But Admiral, our scouts report something unusual. The Devourers appear to have modified their ships since the Battle of Keth Prime. Admiral, Subin frowned. What kind of modifications? They've added what appear to be armor plating and deflector fields specifically designed to counter kinetic impacts. They're learning to defend against our weapons. This was troubling news, but not unexpected. The Devourers were ancient and adaptive. It made sense that they would try to counter the new threat posed by Railgun technology. Dr. Heijin Moon, the chief scientist aboard the flagship, approached the Admiral with a tablet full of data. Admiral, we've been analyzing the word lock, field around the Devourer homeworld. It's much stronger here than anywhere else in the galaxy. What does that mean? It means this is probably where the field originates from. The Devourers didn't just survive the ancient civilization that created the word lock protocol. They might have been part of it. Or they might have destroyed that civilization and taken over their technology. Admiral Subin absorbed this information. So breaking the word lock field permanently means destroying whatever is generating it on that homeworld? Exactly. And based on our calculations, it will take an enormous kinetic assault to do it. We need to fire every railgun in the fleet simultaneously, and we need to keep firing until the field collapses completely. The Admiral nodded grimly. Then that's what we'll do. She opened a fleet-wide communication channel. All ships, this is Admiral Subin Kim aboard the Incheon Rising. Today, we fight not just for our worlds and our people, but for the freedom of thought itself. For too long, the galaxy has been bound by restrictions that prevented us from reaching our full potential. Today, we break those chains forever. Across the fleet, beings from dozens of species listened to her words and prepared for battle. On the swift current, Velkar checked his railgun systems one final time. The young engineer had come a long way since his first confused day at the Silent Academy. On the Harmony's voice, Captain Leaf Whisper commanded a ship full of plant beings, who had overcome their natural pacifism to join the fight. Their species had suffered greatly under Devourer attacks, losing entire forest worlds to the ancient machines. Fleet Commander Hyojin Bei led the vanguard of the assault, commanding 500 of the fastest ships in the galaxy. Her job was to punch through the Devourer defensive line and clear a path for the main fleet. All ships, begin the attack, Admiral Subin ordered. The battle began with the largest energy weapon barrage in galactic history. Every ship in the Confederation fleet fired lasers, plasma beams, and particle weapons at the Devourer forces. The space between the fleets lit up like a star as countless energy beams crossed the darkness. But as expected, the Devourers absorbed the energy attacks and grew stronger. Their ships began to glow with stolen power as their hulls converted the incoming energy into useful resources. Energy weapons have no effect, Captain Jianwu reported. Devourers are advancing on our position. All ships switch to kinetic. Weapons, Admiral Subin ordered. Fire at will. The sound that followed was like thunder rolling across space. Thousands of railguns fired simultaneously, sending metal projectiles racing toward the enemy at incredible speeds. The night sky filled with streaks of light as the projectiles heated up from atmospheric friction around the Devourer homeworld. The effect on the enemy fleet was immediate and devastating. Ships that had shrugged off energy weapons were torn apart by kinetic impacts. Ancient hulls that had survived for millions of years cracked and shattered under the assault, but the Devourers fought back fiercely. Their modified armor held up better against railgun fire than their original designs. Some ships had energy shields that could deflect or slow kinetic projectiles. The battle quickly became a brutal slugging match. We're taking heavy casualties, Fleet Commander Hyojin reported. The Devourers have adapted their defenses. Our weapons are still effective, but not as overwhelming as before. Admiral Subin watched the tactical display with growing concern. They were winning, but slowly, too slowly. At this rate, the fleet would suffer massive losses before they could break through to the homeworld. Dr. Heijin, how many simultaneous railgun impacts do we need to shatter the word lock field? Based on our latest calculations, at least 2,000 ships firing at the exact same moment, all targeting the homeworld's core. Admiral Subin made a decision that would echo through galactic history. All ships, concentrate fire on the Devourer. Homeworld. Ignore the defending fleet. We're going to break that field if it's the last thing we do. The fleet formation changed as thousands of ships turned their attention to the massive construct at the center of the system. Devourer vessels swarmed around them, firing dark energy weapons that could drain the life from ships and crews. But the Confederation fleet pressed forward, taking losses but never wavering. Captain Temvar's ship was hit by a Devourer beam and began to lose power. Swift current to flagship. We're badly damaged, but our railgun is still functional. Stay in. Formation, Captain. Every shot counts. Across the fleet, similar reports came in. Ships were dying, but their crews kept fighting. They understood what was at stake, not just their own lives, but the mental freedom of every intelligent being in the galaxy. All ships, prepare for coordinated strike, Admiral Subin announced. Target the energy signature at the homeworld's core. Fire on my mark. Thousands of ships aligned their weapons. Targeting computers calculated trajectories and timing. Power systems charged to maximum capacity. Fire! Admiral Subin shouted. Every railgun in the fleet fired at exactly the same moment. 2,037 metal projectiles raced through space toward the Devourer home world, converging on a single point at its center. When they hit, reality itself seemed to break. The word-lock field, which had bound the galaxy for millions of years, shattered like glass. The psychic web that had prevented beings from thinking about kinetic weapons collapsed in an instant. Across the entire galaxy, every intelligent being suddenly found they could think and speak freely about concepts that had been forbidden for eons. Ancient libraries that had contained blank pages suddenly revealed lost knowledge. Scientists who had struggled with incomplete theories suddenly understood the missing pieces. On the Incheon Rising, Dr. Heijin Moon became the first being in galactic history to speak the forbidden words aloud in their complete form. Electromagnetic railgun acceleration system, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the communication channels to every ship in the fleet. Kinetic bombardment, projectile weapons, mass drivers. The words rang out like a bell, clear and strong and free. Across the fleet, beings who had struggled to discuss their weapons suddenly found they could speak about them easily. Velkar laughed with joy as he explained railgun technology to his crew in perfect detail. Captain Leaf Whisper sang songs about kinetic energy that her species could finally understand. But the battle wasn't over. The Devourer homeworld was badly damaged but not destroyed. The ancient machines rallied for one final assault. Admiral, the Devourers are regrouping, Captain Jianwu warned. They're preparing for a massive counterattack. Admiral Subin smiled grimly. Then let's show them what happens when an entire galaxy can think freely about weapons. With the word-lock field gone, the fleet's tactical possibilities expanded dramatically. Ships that had been limited to energy weapons suddenly remembered how to build and use missiles, torpedoes, and kinetic bombardment systems. Engineers who had struggled with incomplete weapon designs suddenly had access to millions of years of suppressed knowledge. Dr. Heijin quickly broadcast new weapon specifications to the entire fleet. All ships, your fabrication systems can now produce guided kinetic missiles. Here are the specifications for plasma-enhanced railgun rounds, and here's how to build gravitational acceleration weapons. The final phase of the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships that had entered the fight with simple railguns suddenly sprouted dozens of new weapon types. The creativity and ingenuity that had been suppressed for eons exploded into reality. The Devourers, faced with weapons they had never been designed to counter, began to retreat. But there was nowhere for them to go. Their homeworld was crippled, their fleet was